Hello again, VC. I guess thanks are in order for the very nice comments I got on this first video I made, and therefore here I am again. And some people requested an introduction, the mandatory introduction video. I guess I would not do that. Except I'm kind of doing that since this will be an introduction to something very formative for my musical path. But firstly, the background music here is Andrew Schalk from Mirror. It's a very nice edition in a wooden box set with an insert rice paper. I don't know what to call it. It's just gorgeous. Drone music. I got it directly from him back in quite some time ago. Yeah, I was still living in France back then, so that was at least 12 years ago, 15 years ago. Anyways, maybe a clue to what we are going to listen to tonight. As tonight is also a full moon night, which is the moon is a very crucial part of this band's aesthetic. No, we're not gonna talk about Nine Inch Nails, although we kind of are, obviously. This is Broken, Nine Inch Nails' second album, mini album, remixes. There is a G.J. Thirlwell from Fetus, Butch Vig, Chris Brenna, Trent Reznor in various combos, and Coil with Danny Hyde. Yes, we're gonna talk about Coil. So I bought this since, as a very young teen, I was actually into Nine Inch Nails. At least Pretty Hate the Machine and what came after, up to Closer. Closer, which featured this single, featuring the precursor mix of Closer by Coil and Danny Hyde in '94, which was also featured in the feature film 7, which I happened to be at the premiere in the theater somehow, and the opening credits are soundtracked by this remix, even if it was back then uncredited. This remix, I think, is very important since how it spread through mainstream culture, because it introduced a certain aesthetic of sound to mainstream audiences, and I strongly believe that this is the reason why David Bowie was able to make Outside with the single I'm Afraid of Americans, which was kind of a departure from everything he had done before, at least in my opinion. This also features actually artwork by Russell Mills, as the whole series of records around Closer, around the Downward Spiral, the album that featured Closer. Russell Mills was a graphic designer and an artist who is, I believe, mostly known for work he did for Wire and lots of bands, post-punk bands in the early 80s. He even collaborated with Wire, at least with Bruce Gilbert and Graham Lewis in not in Dome, but in some other project, I don't remember the name, it's somewhere here. It's pretty good. And he did a couple of albums on the Time Emmet label in their mid-90s, featuring people like Kevin Shields from I Believe Valentine, Mark Clifford from Seafield, probably Bill Laswell, and a bunch of other good people from the indie world like Robin Guthrie, like lots of people like that. And I guess, yeah, well, he did this artwork. So this record is kind of very important for me, as Wire has also become a huge favorite of mine around that time as well. So yeah, back then I was starting to get really heavily into Nurse with Wound, which I had discovered the summer before that. And my friend Thomas was heavily into Coil, yeah. So basically I pushed him towards Nurse with Wound and he pushed me towards Coil, because I knew Coil through Nine Inch Nails, basically. And I just fell into a wormhole. Obviously Coil is this duo, Peter Christopherson from Throbbing Gristle, and also Hypnosis, a graphic studio where he actually designed record sleeves for Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, 10cc, dozens of others. He even did videos, he directed videos for bands later like Rage Against the Machine, Guns N' Roses, I believe even Madonna. But before he started Coil with Geoff Rushton, mostly known to everyone as John Balance, his partner, lover. When Throbbing Gristle exploded or imploded into several entities, Psychic TV, Genesis Peorage, Chris and Cozy, Coil, and other side projects before everyone found their definitive path, Peter still collaborated with Genesis Peorage, who recently passed away, in his band Psychic TV. I'm not the hugest Throbbing Gristle fan, to be honest. I think it's a very important band for industrial music, of course. it is the industrial band. I'm not such a Psychic TV fan either, but this album from 1983, I believe, this is amazing. This still features Peter, and it's got all this aspect of industrial music that gets forgotten by most people, such as folk music, a Shakespearean quality, like there is something rotten in the kingdom. This is not Christianity, this is still pagan. We're coming from Arthurian legends, and there's this pastoral feeling that is just so beautiful, lush. I guess this foreshadows also a lot of things, like this lotus flower, basically a sexual organ featuring a piercing, genital mutilation, which is one of the obsessions or the themes in early Coil. Well, this is really a must listen, and I encourage you to listen to this, especially if you're into psychedelic folk, post-punk, and just beautiful music done in a low-key fashion. I think the first incarnation of Coil comes in this compilation, the Elephant Table album, which features tracks by early tracks by Muslim Ghost, Monte Casaza, I believe Diamanda Gallas, and Nurse with Wound, of course. Great design, I believe, by Stephen Stapleton from Nurse with Wound. A compilation of difficult music. I guess this is where Coil originated in a way, but not as something that was going to be sustainable for 20, 30 years. Well, it did, but they didn't know it back then. Then came this single, How to Destroy Angels, which actually inspired also another connection with Nine Inch Nails, since in 10 years ago or so, I believe. Trent Reznor with his wife and 2 other people started a side project called How to Destroy Angels. It's alright, it's better than anything Nine Inch Nails since Downward Spiral, in my opinion, because Nine Inch Nails became a stadium rock band after Downward Spiral. So this is subtitled Ritual Music for the Accumulation of Male Sexual Energy, 17 minutes. The price of existence is eternal warfare. This is really, really great. This is suddenly Coil showing, oh, this is something way different from the aftermath of Robin Gristle. The B-side is a continuous drone, very much inspired by La Montagne in many ways. Like, nothing is happening, you have to listen to it under quite a long time to notice tone changes, very subtle ones. This is a great record. This is the first real album by Coil. I have 2 copies of it, one with a postcard here. I couldn't find it here. Never mind, the music is the same. Scatology. Quite a strong title for the mainstream world in 1984. You have to remember that back then, such records in England were getting hyped. They were getting press on the same level as most new bands. And with tracks such as the Sewage Workers' Birthday Party, Cathedral in Flames, Godhead, Deathhead, Solar Lodge, Spoiler, Tenderness of Wolves, Panic, At the Heart of It All, also referenced by Nine Inch Nails later on. I believe there's something I'm missing here that is even more controversial. Anyways, this is more traditional industrial music. Not to say that it hasn't aged well, it has aged. It is almost like a historical document. You wouldn't necessarily want to listen to this if you're not already into Coil now. Back then it was pretty revolutionary, I guess. At the same time, they released this record on tape with Zoskia, which is a short-lived project which John Balance was at one point part of. This came out as a cassette in '84 and was reissued on vinyl twice. First in '97, I believe, on Threshold House label, which was Coil's label. This is alright. This is, I guess, quite on the same level as Scatology, maybe a notch under. It's everyone can make their mind up, but it's an interesting record. Here's a compilation where Coil appeared alongside other great industrial bands such as Harfer Trio, Nurse with Wound, Sema, P16D4, Current 93, Legendary Pink Dots, Any Anxiety, and Crass, actually. So this is pretty cool. Devastate to Liberate, an Animal Liberation Front release. One other aspect of Coil. Let me change quickly this side. Then came Panic, the single from Scatology, which featured Tainted Love, a cover of Tainted Love, which is quite incredible. This is where John Balance attempts to show his vocal capacity or aesthetic to the full of its potential for the first time. I guess his singing is an acquired taste. You wouldn't say he's a great singer. He has abilities, which he actually developed and yeah, he just became better and better over the years. But this is interesting because this is from 85, I believe, even if it was on the 84 album. This is the first time AIDS is referenced in mainstream pop culture, I believe. In a video clip shot by Derek Jarman, the great director of Caravaggio, The Lost of England, and where The War Requiem, which is literally an adaptation of Benjamin Britten's opera. Amazing work featuring Sean Bean, who most people know from The Lord of the Rings, but the video is so dark, so beautiful, so romantic, so yeah, beautiful, and foreshadowing a lot of the dark side of the 80s. But it's really beautiful. Then came The Anal Staircase. Yeah, Peter Christopherson was a designer. The cover is self-explanatory, and it's an EP. This is where Stephen Frower becomes part of the band, I believe. If he might be before, but this is official there. This is still industrial music. They're still kind of figuring out who they are, but it's very interesting, they're testing new stuff. And the angels kiss our souls in bliss. Then came this marvelous album, great design as well. The Horse Rotovator, with this music kiosk, I believe this is from London. This features Who by Fire, a beautiful cover of Leonard Cohen. Ostia, which is an homage to the Piero Pasolini. And this is also where, yeah, this is produced by Clint Roon. This is really where Coil becomes something more accessible in a way, and it's not that they try to be more accessible, it's just that it was a natural way for them to evolve, because they were really about evolving. Beautiful stuff. This was followed by Gold is the Metal, with this 7-inch, the wheel that came along with it. More industrial than Horse Rotovator, but still with like searching their way, testing new directions. When I got this, years after it was released, it featured this, which is, I believe, number 2 of their fanzine. Because yes, Coil were quite at the vanguard of communication with their fans. Basically, throughout their careers, they had mail orders and different ways of communicating with their fans. This was a catalog of past releases, news on upcoming releases, many of which have actually never happened. So we don't know if the recording exists, if it was just a project in the air. Some of them are lost. And this is signed by the band, actually. This is when Otto Avery was part of the band, I believe. Coil featured lots of members throughout the years. We talked about Stephen Frower, whom I will feature in part 2 of this video, Coil Associates. Yeah, like Coil were very transparent. Like John Balance died in 2004. He had lots of problems, health problems with drugs, addictions, then alcoholism. When he died, I got this in the mail. basically a picture of him in his coffin and a poem and a note. Thank you so much for your support. Sleazy, which is Peter, Jan, which was John Balance, later partner in life, and John Balance. I never expected to receive this to my personal address, post address, sometimes in late 2004, and this is how Coil worked. This was a very emotional time. I remember I had fallen out of a friendship with a dear friend of mine, and because of John's death we actually reconnected and are still very good and close friends. This next release, the unreleased themes for Hellraiser by Coil, featuring Stephen Frower as well, which was a connection. Clive Barker, the author of the novella Hellraiser and the movie Hellraiser, worked at the Virgin Megastore in London back then, if I remember correctly, where Stephen Frower also worked. And he introduced Clive to Peter, who was really into underground piercing, body modification, and he introduced him to a magazine of genital piercing, very hardcore stuff, where at the time in '84 or something, which very much influenced the look of the movie, because you would see that in the novella this is completely absent. And so he commissioned Coil this soundtrack, which are basically demos because it never happened, as the studio, when an American studio came in to produce the movie, they said no to this weird music that this weird industrial band was producing, and they got Christopher Young to do the soundtrack, which is whatever it is, but let's not talk about that. Then came this track on the Core compilation, a Conspiracy International project, which is basically Chris and Cozy, with Coil, with John Duncan, with Monte Casaza, with Robert Wyatt, with Lustmore, with Boyd Rice, if I remember correctly. This is a very nice album, very diverse and very interesting. Then came this compilation on Pathological, which is what's his name? The guy from God. Techno Animal, The Bug, Kevin Martin. It's a compilation featuring Carcass, God, Godflesh, Napalm Death, Terminal Cheesecake, and Coil. It is what it is. It's kind of cool, but yeah. Then there's this compilation on Sub Rosa, featuring Coil, Current 93, Sheb Mami, and Turkish Dervishes. This is quite cool. Then came this 7-inch Wrong Eye Scope, with a cover from Savage Pencil, who I don't remember his name as a journalist, but he's a cartoonist and he did lots of stuff for the Wire magazine. This is quite cool. Then came the next phase of Coil, which was introduced by this single, Window Pane. This is a 12-inch I got in the Virgin Megastore. It's not their best, but it's quite cool. At the same time came a remix of this on Razormaid, a remix service label in the US, with club remixes. So you get Vanessa Paradis, Enigma, Falco, Cabaret Voltaire, Justice Springfield, and Coil on the same package. This is not good, but this is quite funny. Then came this, which is the first actual Coil record I bought, The Snow. Coil at their most mainstream in a way. It's almost dance music, with remixes by Midbeat Manifesto. It's kind of acid house, trance, electro, and Coil. It really sounds like Coil. I believe Danny Hyde is entering the Galaxy. I think he was there in a record before that, but this is Coil becoming more electronic, and especially on this single, which I still love, even if it has aged in a way as well. This was a single that came that previewed Love Secret Domain, Coil's masterpiece for many, probably including me. So this features a beautiful cover from Stephen Stapleton of Nurse with Wound. There you got a cock, coming pills, amphetamines, and various bodily fluids. Of lights, conf darkness, Coil, Love Secret Domain, LSD. This features so many different tracks of different styles. This is Coil becoming an accomplished band with a variety of styles that they actually master and make everything mesh together